أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فوضوا أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى صدق الله العلي العظيم. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman across the globe, Salamun alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: what is the history of the Shia of Ali? Bear this question in the back of your mind. And number two, what is the crime of the Shia of Ali? Bear this point in mind as well. We'll return to it inshallah. When we look at the followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib and we look at the history of the Shia community, locally, regionally, and internationally, you begin to notice certain trends. That we have been highlighting the position of Ali ibn Abi Talib after Rasulullah, that leadership was appointed by Rasulullah to be with Ali ibn Abi Talib at the event of Ghadir Khum or at other moments in time such as Da'wat al-Ashira and other moments. And yet those people who became the partisans of Ali, the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib, what was their fate during the times of Ali ibn Abi Talib, during the aftermath and the demise and the martyrdom of Ali ibn Abi Talib? What was their example? And till this day, what is the example of the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib? How are they identified? What is the persecution that they have gone through? And what are the horizons for moving forward with respect to the Shia and their future frontiers? This is what I hope to look at in our conversation today. And why this is especially pertinent in our modern world is because we notice an environment where we are living in an era and an environment of Islamophobia on the one hand, where generally with respect to Islam, as I've been highlighting in the previous lectures, the image or the picture of Islam that is in the public domain is not the proper picture of Islam. It's not the rightful picture of Islam. It's not the accurate picture of Islam. It's not the picture of Islam that the Holy Prophet espoused to. It was not the picture of Islam that Ali ibn Abi Talib wanted. And I say this especially because we live in a world where on the one side there's sectarianism and on the other side there is Islamophobia. And those people who adhere to Shia Islam, on one side they are squashed by Islamophobia, by bigots and racists, and on the other side they are squashed by sectarianism within Islam itself. And this is perhaps seen not better than any other example in the example of Aya Hashim, a young girl who was killed in cold blood due to Islamophobia in Blackburn, United Kingdom. A 19-year-old girl who was the victim of a drive-by shooting at the hands of the hatred of Islamophobia. Those people who are bigots, those people who are racist, those people who are discriminatory, killed this individual, this lady, this girl, because of her hijab and her adherence to Islam. But the unfortunate tragedy of an individual like Aya Hashim, who represents not only herself, but so many other people throughout history and in the modern era, is she was killed in life. She was killed by Islamophobes, by people who are Islamophobic. And in death, or after her death, she was the victim of sectarianism, not by non-Muslims, but by Muslims. How? That after her death, there was a GoFundMe, a fundraising that occurred that was set up by a Muslim brother who did not adhere to Shiaism, who did not adhere to the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. This person sets up a GoFundMe for Aya Hashim and her family in order to raise funds. And he says, I found out that she was a Shia. And his reaction is that I apologize. I should not have created this GoFundMe. I should have not have raised funds. And this is something that I don't want to be responsible for on the Day of Judgment, that I'll be accountable in the negative sense for doing something like this. Imagine that the level of animosity, the level of hatred can rise to a level that one Muslim is saying that another Muslim, I am afraid that God on the Day of Judgment will hold me liable, will hold me accountable that I raised funds for someone who's a Shia Muslim. What level of hatred, what level of animosity, what level of is this in a society, in a world that we live in? I should note, I received reports that this person who said this, who raised the funds and then apologized for raising the fund, has now again apologized for his demeanor and is saying that the funds will be raised and the funds will be kept. But at the same time, the response, the comments from some other Muslims or so-called Muslims is saying that this lady, Aya Hashim, they were supporting that the funds should be withdrawn. They were supporting that the funds should be given back. They were supporting these actions. And for those people who have adhered to Shia Islam and those people who know the history of Shia Islam, for them, this will not be a surprise. Rather, if you look at the words of Sayyid Riyad al-Hakim or other commentators who have analyzed this topic, the history of Shia genocide, the history of violence towards Shias, the history of persecution of Shias is not new. Rather, it's something that has existed since the time of Rasulullah, in fact, in the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the time of the era of the Umayyas, that is the Umayyads. And it's very clear within the pages of history that this occurred. Therefore, I want to look at, in our brief moments, in our brief conversation today, I want to look at a few stages of this and help the Muslim community understand why this problem needs to be addressed, why the history of Islam must be understood, why the history of Shiaism must be understood in particular, so that we can put an end to Islamophobia, we can put an end to sectarianism, or rather, we can put an end to Shia phobia. This fear that exists in the minds of certain Muslims with respect to the Shia faith that allows them and enables them to harbor animosity and hatred towards the Shia to the extent that it allows them to lose their humanity in viewing the Shia followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And so therefore, I want to look at why this is. What is the power of one's belief? And how has this caused fear in the hearts and minds of tyrants throughout history? I want to look at the history of persecution amongst the companions of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the close confidants of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and also those people who are in the aftermath and during the times of the other Imams, and also up until the modern era and modern time. How has our world developed and seen Shia genocide and Shia phobia that has existed? And how does this exist up until this very day? And what is it that you and I can do about it in order to solve this challenge, in order to make a more harmonious, a more loving, a more peaceful, a more tranquil world? This is our topic of discussion and the stages of analysis of our conversation today, inshallah. The first point that I want to highlight, and the first element of the equation that I want to highlight with respect to this matter, is the power of belief. People throughout history have understood that when you look at the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, there is something in their belief that causes rulers, that causes oppressors, that causes tyrants to feel a sense of fear, feel a sense of worry about what? That if the Shia principles are established, if the Shia rulership is established, if the Shia vision is mobilized, then their power, their rule will be destroyed. And don't take my word for this matter. Rather, take the word of experts in this field. Take the words of Time magazine, for example. No, take the words of Wali Nasser at Johns Hopkins University, a leading expert on global affairs and international relations, but not only that, an expert on the topic of the Middle East. And he highlights that for the Shia community, rule under the Sunni community, that is Sunni role, his words, not mine, for the Shias, Sunni rule has been like living under apartheid. This is the view of Wali Nasser, one of the leading experts on the matter, on the subject of the Middle East and on the history of Islam as well as modern international relations. Why is Wali Nasser saying this? That for Shias, Sunni rule or being ruled by the Sunni majority has been tantamount to apartheid. Apartheid, that government that was established in South Africa, where there was racial divides, that the black community, the indigenous community was not equivalent to the white community that had moved there. That community, that there was a complete divide and segregation and there were not even rights, there were not. That movement, apartheid, which Nelson Mandela dedicated his life to fight tooth and nail, Wali Nasser is saying the way that the Sunni rule generally throughout history, the way that they ruled over Shias was as if it was just like apartheid. These are what experts who have dedicated their life to these topics are saying. It is high time that the Muslim community and the global community raise their minds and raise their eyes and look at and listen with all of their senses about the concept, about the topic of Shia genocide and Shia phobia, so that this is put to an end. It is Aya Hashim today. Yesterday, it was a hospital in a Hazara district of Afghanistan, a maternity ward of all places that was targeted. And throughout history, as we'll highlight in a few moments, this has been the reality for Shias through thick and thin, and for no other reason except their love of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin of Rasulullah, the son-in-law of Rasulullah, the brother of Rasulullah, as the Holy Prophet himself said, the brother of the Prophet, the Aaron to the Moses of this Muhammad. Only for harboring love of Ali's family? No. Only for harboring the love and holding the love of the Holy Prophet? No. Only for harboring the love of the Holy Prophet and his progeny? That's the only crime of these people? And yet the international community does not wake up? And yet the Muslim community does not wake up? How is this possible? Why is this happening? And it's time that the world take notice to put a stop to these things. The number one element is the power of the belief. The belief of the followers of the Ahlul Bayt is a stand for justice. It is a stand for equality. It is a stand for fairness. As I've highlighted in the previous lectures, Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he took on the mantle of Khilafat, he said in his inaugural address that I am here to essentially establish justice. I am here to return the right of the people whose right has been taken. I have come here to establish justice, to establish equity. He said that I am here to make sure that anyone who's built wealth and amassed wealth while compromising and taking the right of the public treasury and the people at large, I will take that stolen money away and return it to its rightful possessor, or the person who should possess it appropriately. He says, number one. He said, number two, from today onwards, there's no special treatment. Everyone gets the same amount of income from the Baytul Mal, the public treasury. He says everyone's the same, except in the matters of taqwa, as Rasulullah had highlighted. He established egalitarianism. He established equity. He established justice. He established fairness in society. And this is what was picking at the hearts and minds of those people whose status quo equilibrium of the good life had been disrupted. Those people who were living the high life, those people who were living the luxurious life, those people who had benefited so much under the rulers before Ali and after Rasulullah, those people who had luxurious palaces and homes and women and all the wealth that you could imagine, those people got upset with Ali ibn Abi Talib. Why? Because he was disrupting their way of life. And so this animosity began. To what extent did this animosity exist? This animosity, this hatred, this bigotry existed from that time, from the very beginning, and continues till this day at the highest level. How? If you read the history of the Muslim world and you read the history of, for example, the place such as Baghdad, or the history of Baghdad, Tariq Baghdad, for example, and when you analyze this, you will find there was a moment and there was a time in the history of Baghdad. There was a time in history where the walls, the groundbreaking ceremony, that buildings would not be erected, buildings would not be stood up, that there would not be a building that's built unless and until the blood of a Sayyid Hassani, that is someone who traces their lineage back to the Holy Prophet through his grandson Hassan ibn Ali, that someone from his descendants would be brought and their head would be severed and the blood would be drained into the cement. You and I mix cement with water in order to make cement. They were using the blood of who? The Shia. Not only any Shia, the ones who traced and claimed their lineage back to the grandson of the Holy Prophet. This was the level of animosity. Furthermore, there were times where the buildings would not be built and erected until a Sayyid from the lineage of the Holy Prophet was not brought and put and closed between the two confines of the walls alive. Imagine the Shia The Sadat, the people who claim their lineage back to the Holy Prophet, were brought in the open square in front of people, and they were closed between the walls alive, where they suffocated to death. Why? This animosity towards the followers of Ahlul Bayt. Ayah Hashim is not new. This issue has been going on for centuries, and in fact millennia. And the idea is, unless the Muslim community, the followers of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, of the Hanafi school of thought, the Maliki school of thought, the Shafi'i school of thought, the Hanbali school of thought, unless and until the Muslims stand up and rise and say that the blood of a Shia is just as valuable as any other Muslim, this will not end. And unless and until there is a stand by the global community to say that the followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, they must be protected, they must be looked after as a minority group, and they must not be persecuted. As Wali Nasr said, that for the Shia living under Sunni rule, Wali Nasr, the expert on this issue at Johns Hopkins University, is saying, for Shias living under Sunni rule has been equivalent to apartheid. There is an apartheid regime that is still in play till this day. And the world is not taking notice. And the world is not raising a voice. Why is that, I ask? Why this fear of justice, of equity, of fairness? That's all the Shia belief espouses. It espouses to establish justice on earth, to establish fairness on earth, to establish harmony on earth, to establish peace and tranquility on earth. And yet their blood seems to be less valuable than the blood of other Muslims, for example, or other human beings for that matter. But don't take my word for it. Take the words of history. Sayyid Hakim, Riyadh al-Hakim, highlights this in his book, which I highly recommend, Shia, the Identity, Persecution, and Horizons. He highlights the idea of what are the traits that have been associated with Shia throughout history. One of the traits that you will find is the adherence to justice, which I highlighted a moment ago. That the Shia, the same way their imams sought establishment of justice, the Shia were seeking to establish justice as much as possible in society and their communities, to be fair and just and equitable and hardworking. What else is associated with the identity of Shias? The history of Shias shows that knowledge has been associated with the identity of the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, that is the Shias. How? That all of the Imams, from Imam Ali alayhi salam up until Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, and of course Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, but with respect to especially the first 11 Imams, it's clear all historians, whether Shia or Sunni, no matter what, even if they were a friend or a foe, accepted that if nothing else, that the first 11 Imams of the Shia were, if nothing else, they were one of the biggest scholars of their time. They were one of the biggest academics of their time. They were some of the biggest writers of their time. They were the biggest intellectuals of their time. Even their enemies, even their foes, even their adversaries had to accept this reality, and they could not neglect it. So their followers, as a byproduct, became the embodiment of knowledge, became the embodiment of wisdom, the same way that their leadership had embodied these traits. So the next level, the first is justice, the next level is knowledge. And then the next level that emerges, that was not something that the Shia necessarily sought after to bring upon themselves, but it became so pervasive and it became so common, it became a sort of part of the identity of the Shia. What was that? Persecution. The persecution, that is the unlawful, unjust, unfair discrimination, the unfair murder of Shias became part and parcel of the norm. That for their principles, for their adherence to justice, for their knowledge, for all of their virtue, the price that the Shia paid was persecution. At which hands? So the Riyadh highlights the first level of mass murder and mass killing of the Shia emerged under the time of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. This person who was ruling over the Levant, ruling over modern day Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, this individual was the first person, by means of using his governor by the name of Ziyad bin Abi. Ziyad bin Abi was that person who was the governor of Kufa, was a wretched, hard-hearted person. And he allowed, in fact, he encouraged the mass butchering, the mass killing of the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. Ziyad bin Abi, Ziyad bin Abi, meaning Ziyad, the son of his father. A strange name or a unique name. Why? Referring to somebody who is the son of his father, that you would assume that anyone is the son of their father. It's a biological process. But the idea was his father was unknown. And in fact, much of his background is questionable. The reason I highlight this is this person had nothing to lose in society. This individual therefore stopped at nothing to make sure that he made the lives of the followers of Ahlul Bayt a living tumultuous volcano that was the most difficult environment to be in. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, the fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, says that in a historical document, he says that the persecution that the Shia faced under Muawiyah by means of Ziyad bin Abi, the governor of Kufa, was such that thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of the Shia were killed. Their hands were severed left and right. Their feet were cut off left and right. And those were the ones who were caught, they were killed left, right, and center. And the ones who were not caught, they were forced to flee into remote towns and into remote localities. I just returned from India not too long ago. If you go in India, for example, you will find in regions such as Lucknow, in, for example, the outskirts of a city like Lucknow, in the middle, in the central provinces of India, for example, you will find remote villages. You will find remote localities where there are followers of the Ahlul Bayt. No, not just followers of Ahlul Bayt. You will find Sadat, descendants of the Holy Prophet, who live in remote villages that you have to drive for hours sometimes to get to. And they don't live in the city. Why? Because they fled, or their ancestors fled many years ago, because they were suffering the persecution of the likes of Muawiyah and his descendants and his henchmen. Only for one thing, for one crime. What crime? That they had the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib in their hearts. This is a crime? What did they do wrong? Until this day, many people whose origin was Arab, many people whose origin was Persian, many people whose origin was Turkish, many people whose origin was Lebanese, many people whose origin was not Indian, rather, but they ended up in India. Why? Because they were fleeing persecution. Those people who ended up in Sindh, in modern day Pakistan, for example, those people who ended up in these regions and these provinces just to save their life. They left their culture, they left their heritage, they left their people, they left their lands. Why? Because they were open ducks, sitting ducks who were being killed, metaphorically, so to speak. Why? Muawiyah was the first to kill. Who was the second? Yazid ibn Muawiyah legitimized mass killings of the Shia at Karbala, but not only at Karbala. After that, in Waqi'at al-Harra, the one who went and attacked Medina, Rasulullah. Read the pages of history. Why is Yazid wretched? Not according to Shia scholars, according to the scholars of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah throughout history, that there was never a time, if you read the honest history, if you read the fair history, if you read the majority history of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah throughout history, they said there is no comparison between Hussein ibn Ali, who the Holy Prophet said is Sayyid Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, who Rasulullah said Al-Hasan wal-Hussein qama or imaman qama or qada, that they are imams whether they are standing or seated. That Hussein ibn Ali and Yazid ibn Muawiyah, all Sunni scholars throughout history said he's a wretched man. And yet somehow in our modern world, people come forward and have the audacity to say Yazid radiallah. How on earth can you say something so audacious? That the issue between Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and Yazid was merely the battle between two princes? This type of rhetoric and illogical argumentation? Have you read the scholarship of scholars throughout history? Muawiyah, the one who raped women and pillaged them in Mecca and Medina? That individual who legitimized this? That person can be compared to Hussein ibn Ali? Have the Muslims not read their history? It's not personal here. The same way Ali ibn Abi Talib said that I didn't kill when the Umayyads, when the people who Abdullah ibn Umar, when people such as Talha and Zubair came and they said you killed our ancestors. Ali ibn Abi Talib said it wasn't personal. It was truth versus falsehood. The same way with respect to this issue, it is not a personal grudge against anyone from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It's an issue of principle and truthfulness. Stand up for humanity. Stand up for what's right. When you went down the line, Umayyad ruler after Umayyad ruler legitimized the killing of the Ahlul Bayt's progeny, the killing of the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And when you look at this, you realize this hasn't stopped. You may say this is early Islam. You go further than this, the Middle Era. Which era in time? The era of the Turks, the Ottoman Empire. What happened under the Ottoman Empire? Sultan Salim. Sultan Salim, this is roughly the 1500s. In this era, roughly 500 years ago, in the Ottoman era, Sultan Salim, he says, I want you to round up all of the Shia under the dominion. Get and gather and collect all of the followers of Ahlul Bayt, all of the Shia, and bring them to me. They said every single Shia, man, woman, and child was brought forth. They said they got thousands, 70,000, 100,000. They brought them all together. 70,000 is a more accurate number. They brought them all together. And in that same day, that one day, we're told that he says 40,000 of them are to be killed. 40,000. Imagine this Shia genocide. No, this Shia phobia. For those who say that this is a one-off, for those who say this is an outlier, for those who say this is a one-time thing, I invite you to read the history of Islam and understand what has been happening. Sultan Salim, 1500s, Ottoman Turkey. What did he say? He said, round up all the Shia, 70,000, 40,000 beheaded in one day. The rest were imprisoned for life. Imprisoned for life? Furthermore, Sultan Murad in the Ottoman Spain, right after Salim, Sultan Murad, he says that the Shia, now look, the fear of the Shia was because of what? It was because of their principle and their belief and the understanding that if their movement catches fire, their movement, their connection to Hussein ibn Ali, their connection to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and that revolutionism, that motivation, that inspiration, that strength of Karbala, that embers, if they get fire, this will be an unstoppable force. So they were afraid of Shias. At that moment in time, Sultan Murad says, I want a fatwa. He calls his wazirs, he calls his rulers, his muftis, his religious guides. That, of course, guide being a symbolic term, he would tell them what to do, but these were supposed to be the religious scholars. At that moment in time, he says what? He says, listen, I want for you to write a fatwa for me. He says what? Nauf al-Afandi. Nauf Afandi is the young scholar who he says. He says, listen, I want you to write a fatwa for me. What fatwa? He says, I want you to allow and permit and legitimize the spilling of Shia blood from the Islamic perspective. I want you to issue a verdict. This is what Sultan Murad said to Afandi. I want you to write a fatwa that legitimizes and permisses the permissibility of killing the Shia and makes it legitimate. Now look, the environment was such. Either you be an honest scholar or you do what the person asks you. If you're an honest scholar, you do what's of integrity. Such as Imam Nasa'i. Imam Nasa'i was not Shia, but they told Imam Nasa'i, you wrote a book, Khasais Ali ibn Abi Talib, or Khasais Amir al-Mu'min, about Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now write one about Muawiyah. He said, I cannot do this. They killed him. Imam Nasa'i didn't write the book. He didn't fabricate. This person, Afandi, knew that if I write this, then maybe I will survive. But if I don't, he will chop my head off. That is, Murad will have my head off, and he will just call the next scholar, and that next scholar will write the fatwa, and get money. This is the history. And by the way, this has not only happened in Islam. This has happened in Christianity as well, and many other major faiths of the world. Look at the Anglican Church and many other elements of history, and you'll find similar elements throughout history. Nonetheless, when this happened, when this emerged, Afandi wrote the fatwa. He legitimized the killing of the Shia. Furthermore, he didn't stop there. He said that it is acceptable and encouraged to take the women of the Shia as slaves. You can imagine what was the natural byproduct of this fatwa and this verdict. That the women, the sanctity of the women was tarnished, that the people began to become a free-for-all, and the spilling of the blood. In fact, once that fatwa was given, that decree was given, in the city of Aleppo alone, 40,000 Shias were gathered and killed in just one city under the Ottoman rule, in Aleppo, Syria. Just one city. Further than this, you go to Lebanon. In Lebanon, Ibn Taymiyyah, at that point in time, he leads I'm telling the Muslim world to know their history. Aya Hashim is not a one-off event. It's the history of what Muslims have done. Wali Nasser said what? I remind you once again. Wali Nasser at Johns Hopkins University, an expert on this issue in international relations in the Middle East, he said for Shias, living under Sunni rule throughout history has been equivalent to apartheid. Living under apartheid, what was there in South Africa? These are not my words. These are the words of experts on this matter. Why are they saying this? In Lebanon, Ibn Taymiyyah al-Harani, what does he do? He leads a conquest on Mount Lebanon to the point that he began to pillage and he began to kill Shias left, right, and center. Till this day, there is a mount, rather, there is a cliff in Lebanon that is called Sha'ir al-Banat. Why is it called this name? It is called this name because that is that cliff, that is that ledge, that women who were Shia women would jump off this cliff and take their lives. Why? Because those men were raping them left, right, and center. Why? Because it was acceptable to treat Shia Muslims as subhuman. Until this day, that memory is there. Why? Has no one spoken out? Why does no one speak out? Furthermore, you go to Afghanistan, 100 years ago, Abdurrahman Khan, the Iron Amir as he was called, he led a systematic genocide against the Shia community. Roughly 60% of the Hazara community in Afghanistan at that time was butchered and massacred at the hands of Abdurrahman Khan. They say over 100,000 individuals were massacred. What's going to happen when somebody, Abdurrahman Khan, the Iron Amir, comes forward and butchers 100,000 people of the Shia? There used to be many Shias in Afghanistan. Today, there's very few relative to what it used to be. And I'm saying this because when a maternity ward in the month of Ramadan in 2020 is attacked because those people are Shia, the people who are victims are Shia, those people need to understand, and the global community needs to understand that this is not new. This has been happening for years. This has been happening for centuries. Wake up, stand up, speak out, be fair, be just, be equitable. Abdurrahman Khan killed the Shias left, right, and center. They had to flee. Until this day, Hazara are killed because of their love of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But this was not new. This was happening during the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib. To my Shia brothers and sisters, I say, have faith in the personality of Rasulullah and the persecution he went through. Have faith in the personality of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and have faith in the companions that were there, who were those who established justice and had belief, and they were willing to go through the difficult times. Because we believe and we know that when our final moments comes, inshallah, in the grave is Ali ibn Abi Talib. That on the Sirat is Ali ibn Abi Talib. And at Kawthar there is Ali ibn Abi Talib. And at every moment we have Ali ibn Abi Talib. In Hashr, in Barzakh, in the grave, at every moment is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Inshallah. And he will take care of us and he looks after us. But I ask the global community, will you not speak out? Will you not say anything? If for nothing else, for your own consciousness, your own conscience, say something, speak out, be honest, be just, be fair, be equitable. Ali ibn Abi Talib is there at every moment for us. We believe as the followers Ahlul Bayt. Rushayd al-Hajari. Rushayd al-Hajari was that close companion of Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamu alayh. And many will also remember Maytham at-Tammar as well. There were certain companions that Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamu alayh, he had told them and given them the knowledge of how they will be killed. He told them, he said, Rushayd, he said, Maytham, you will be killed because you have my love in your heart. They asked only one question. These companions, they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, will I die in a state where I will still have your love in my heart, that I will die on your path, I will die as a Shia of yours? He said, yes. They said, then we accept anything. We accept any difficulty. We accept any calamity. You know, it's not to be taken lightly. When Rushayd was told this, there comes a moment in time where the governor calls him to the governor's palace. These Umayyas, the Umayyads and the Abbasids didn't stop either. Huh? With the people such as Harun and Ma'mun and these people, Rashid, as the people Muslims call them, but they were not Rashid, huh? They were not at all. Rather, they were Al-Abbasi. They were the misguided. They were the wrong ones. All of these people, but the Umayyads in particular, they called Rushayd al-Hajari. Imam Amir al-Mu'minin told Rushayd what will happen to him. They said, Rushayd, we heard that you tell people the fadail and the merits of Ali ibn Abi Talib in the public square, in the market, in front of people, walking in the town, when sitting, when standing, at every moment, you're telling people the fadail and the merits of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Don't you know this is outlawed? Don't you know this is unacceptable? Don't you know this is impermissible? Don't you know that for 90 years we have been cursing, the Umayyads have been cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib from their pulpits and their mimbars at Jum'ah Salah, and you're reciting his fadail and his merits? How will it come? He said, stop this at once. He says, I will not stop this. He said that, I will cut your hands and your feet, and I will cut out your tongue. At that moment in time, he said, you do what you have to do, I will do what I have to do. At that point in time, we're told that at every moment in time, Rushayd al-Hajari, and you will remember Maytham at-Tamar as well, they began to say the fadail at every moment. Rushayd began to tell people sitting and standing, and he continued to do this in the market square up until the point the governor called him again, and he says, stop what you're doing, otherwise I will cut your hands and your feet and your tongue and everything, and I will leave you to die. Rushayd said, you will never stop me from my praise and the merits of Ali ibn Abi Talib, because there's no one like my master Ali ibn Abi Talib. At that point in time, he ordered for the hands of Rushayd to be cut and the feet of Rushayd to be cut. And at that point in time, he says, will you stop saying what you're saying now? Will you stop reciting the fadail and the merits of Ali ibn Abi Talib? At that point in time, we're told when he's still bleeding, there's a moment in time where he addresses his daughter, Qanwa, the daughter of Rushayd al-Hajari, and says, my daughter, I still have some voice. I still have some life. Take me towards the market and allow me to recite the fadail of Ali ibn Abi Talib. The ruler thought that he will bleed to death. But at that moment, his daughter took him towards the marketplace and said that, oh people, listen to me as I recite the fadail. Why did he begin to do this? Because when the person, the governor, cut his hands and feet and allowed him to bleed, he said, now I will cut your tongue. He says, at that point, Rushayd says that I am not worried about this whatsoever. He said, will you stop reciting the fadail? Rushayd says, I will never stop. He said, I'm waiting for that moment which my master, my Amir Ali ibn Abi Talib told me, that you will cut out my tongue and I will bleed to death in that state. I'm just waiting for that moment which my Mawla, my master, told me will happen. He said, if your master said that this will happen, I will not do it, because I want to make him a liar. This is what you said. At that point in time, Rushayd said, very well, Qanwa, take me to the market. She took him to the market and he began to recite the fadail of Ali ibn Abi Talib in front of the people. And he said, oh people, hear from me in my last moments the fadail of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and bear witness that I took my last breath in the fadail of Ali ibn Abi Talib. That my master Ali ibn Abi Talib was the first Muslim before anyone else with Rasulullah. That my master was the first to pray with Rasulullah. That my master Ali ibn Abi Talib was the one who was on the shoulders of Rasulullah and broke down the idols from the Kaaba. That my master was the first one to accept Ad-Da'wat al-Ashira and become the successor of Rasulullah and support him in the mission. No, my master was the one who was the first in Badr. My master was the first in Uhud. My master was the first in Khandaq, the first in Khaybar, and in every battle he brought victory to the Muslims. No, my master is the one who the Quran said he is the one who gives zakat in the state of ruku while he's praying. That my master is that individual that the Quran says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, on the night of Hijrah, that some people, they sell their souls to their Lord in honor for his blessings and his grace. That is Ali ibn Abi Talib. No, my master is the one who on the day of Ghadir, Rasulullah lifts on his shoulders and says, Man kuntu mawlahu, fahada aliyun mawla, Allahumma wali man wala, wa adi man ada. And he continues to say, whoever's master I am, Ali is his master. And this is what Ali ibn Abi Talib is. And he continues and say, on the day of Mubahila, Ali ibn Abi Talib was taken as the nafs, the self of Rasulullah, when the ayah said, Anfusana wa anfusakum. And he was taken at that position. No, Ali ibn Abi Talib is the one who established justice on earth after Rasulullah. At every moment, Ali ibn Abi Talib, they couldn't do anything. They heard, the governor's palace heard that the whole city has turned upside down because Ali ibn Abi Talib's fadail are being recited by Rushayd as he's bleeding to death. They called him back to the palace of the governor and they said, we have no choice. We must cut out his tongue. Ali ibn Abi Talib said the truth at every moment. My dear brothers and sisters, followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, revive your hearts with the love of Rushayd. Revive your hearts with the love of Maytham at-Tammar. Revive your hearts with the love of Salman. Revive your hearts with the love of Abadar. Revive your hearts with the love of Ammar bin Yasir. Revive your hearts with the love of these companions of Ali ibn Abi Talib who went through some of the most difficult of times. And know that Ali ibn Abi Talib, insha'Allah, bi'idhnillah, he will be with us in the grave. He will be with us in Barzakh. He will be with us on the Sirat. He will be with us at Kawthar. And at every moment we will be under the shadow of Ali ibn Abi Talib up until the point that we get to Jannah, inshallah, under the banner of Ali ibn Abi Talib. But I ask the world, the Muslim community, those followers of the Hanafi school of thought, the Maliki school of thought, the Shafi'i school of thought, the Hanbali school of thought, will you not speak out for your own conscience, for truth, for justice, for fairness? Will you not speak out and say that what had happened to Ayah Hashim was wrong? The way that some of the Muslim community reacted to her and the fundraising is wrong. Will you not speak out? So at least on Yawm al-Qiyamah, at least on the day of judgment, you can look at Rasulullah in his face and say that, Ya Rasulullah, when your family, when your descendants, when your loved ones were being persecuted, I at least raised a voice. I at least expressed my disapproval. At least that. Otherwise, how will you show your face to Rasulullah on the day of judgment? That his progeny was being killed, his followers were being killed, and you didn't have any interest in speaking out? I leave this question for the Muslim world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to establish justice on this earth, to establish fairness on this earth, the way Ali ibn Abi Talib sought for justice to be established on this earth, the way Rasulullah wanted it to be established on this earth. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant justice and peace and tranquility to the family of Ayah Hashim and all those Shi'as and all those Muslims and all those people who have been killed innocently throughout the globe. Those Hazara mothers who are killed in Afghanistan, the maternity ward, all those people who have been killed unjustly and unfairly. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to learn from the example of Ali ibn Abi Talib and his Shias and his true companions, the likes of Rushayd al-Hajari and the likes of Maytham at-Tammar. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman, to establish justice and fairness and equity on the earth once again, so that the world can live in peace and harmony. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.